How are you anyway?
Oh, doing pretty good, man. Just sitting here in the Rocky Mountains, and it's like we've been having lots of storms lately. But it's good because fire danger is one of the things that we really have to look out for. And it's been pretty moist all summer so far. So we're doing good. Everything's fine, man.
I'd love to live where you are because Europe is burning at the moment, I think.
Oh, brother, yeah, we're getting ready to go up to Canada in September, and I know they're on fire too. So.
Okay. Anyway, before we start talking about Buffalo Springfield, I was wondering what prompted the recording of In the Country, and with your history, especially with Poco and Buffalo Springfield, do you consider yourself the architect of country rock?
Well, I certainly believe that we were Poco, because it was pretty much my thoughts, with along with Jimmy Messina, that we were the ones that kind of had that vision to kind of cross rock with country.
Yeah.
We weren't the only ones. Obviously, the Byrds were doing it, and the Burrito Brothers were doing it. But I think between the three of us there, we were certainly the ones that pioneered. What is called, California country rock now. It was really nothing new. We were certainly doing the same thing that maybe some guys like Gene Vincent and Carl Perkins and guys like that were doing way back when, but we were playing a little more rock and roll to country music. But it was something certainly that we reinvented along the way. My friend Val Gray,
Mhm.
great producer, and I've known Val since Buffalo Springfield days.
Yeah.
He was the one that came to me and asked me if I'd like to do another record with him. I of course recorded "I Still Have Dreams" with him back in 1979, and I thought, hey, what do you have in mind? And he said, well, maybe to do some country hits or country classics,
Yeah.
and we started putting our heads together and came up with the songs that ended up in the country. And it was just a fun project for me. I wasn't really looking to do another record. And when he asked me to do it, I was very happy to do it. And we got some great musicians in Nashville together to record it. And I thought we did a good job on these covers. I think for the most part, we revitalized the hits that they were and made them our own.
Yeah, brilliant, brilliant. Can you do me a favor? Could you possibly turn your camera slightly down? Because all I'm getting is that you're perfect. There you are.
Is that good now? Okay, good. Excellent.
What a handsome man you are.
Well, no, careful now.
I've got to ask you, I'm fascinated that you did a 6 week stint at the Whisky. I mean, how important was that to the evolution of Buffalo Springfield?
Well, that was the time that Buffalo Springfield was definitely the best that we ever were. We only lasted 2 years, and that was the original band. And I think the original band was obviously the best version of Buffalo Springfield. Even with Jimmy, I believe that it was still the best version of Buffalo Springfield. And it was we were tight. I mean, we played every night. And as young kids, we were able to keep up with the demands that were put on us to do live shows, and it was just a lot of fun. It was so much fun to be making music at that time. We were actually the house band at the Whisky with the Doors and with
Wow.
Love, and there were several other bands I can't think of now off the top of my head, but certainly with the Doors and Love, and it was a fun time.
Do you have any? You said you were with the Doors. Do you have any Jim Morrison stories?
Oh, God. Jim was a mystery, man. I remember walking in there sometimes when we were doing our double shows, and they would be playing on stage, and I'd look around for the lead singer. Where is this guy, man? And he's laying back up on top of a big Fender group of bass amps. I really didn't know Jim Barry.
Uh,
He was a mystique and a mystery. But certainly it was fun playing with them at the time. Like it was just so much, so much going on in LA and so many different kinds of music. And certainly the Doors in Buffalo Springfield made a very interesting bill at the Whisky A Go Go at that
Oh,
time.
I bet they did. I've read a lot of stuff about how the San Francisco bands were a bit sniffy about bands from LA. I mean, how did you feel about those sprawling bands like the Grateful Dead and Jefferson Airplane? Was there a competition between you guys?
I don't really think that there was a conscious competition at all. I mean, we were doing our thing, and they were doing theirs, and we were friends with the Airplane.
Mm,
Again, didn't know them well, and with Moby Grape.
yeah.
With the Grateful Dead, yeah, I mean, it was just I think people like to make things up. They want to. Was there competition here? Was there competition within the band? Was there, and I think people just they need a story, and
Yeah.
I don't really think that it was much of a story at all.
Interestingly, Pete Townsend said that the 1960s counterculture was nothing more than youthful idealism and drug-fueled hope. Yeah. To what extent would you agree with him, or not at all?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it, as far as I'm concerned, we were just making music. We were just having a good time making music and creating, the music that came through the five of us at the time, and that's what it was.
Yeah. Um, would you say that it was actually the death of Buffalo Springfield, or was essentially down to the very fraught relationship between Stephen Stills and Neil Young? Is that where the problem lay, do you think?
I don't think there was a problem there. Again, I think it was manufactured and created. I mean, Neil, I don't think ever wanted to really be a part of a band situation, to tell you the truth.
Right.
And I think he was looking at every group that he was in as a stepping stone to maybe having a solo career. And I mean, that's the way it was with him all along. Even when we did the reunion back in 2010,
Yeah.
I mean, he was only around for a certain amount of time, and when we did Bonnaroo, he was gone. And it's just, you just as someone that was close to him, and all, it was just something you learned to live with. But as far as trying to pit Stephen against Neil and Neil against Stephen, nah, that's not. I don't think that's true. I mean, we just did an interview for the documentary that I've got coming out next year,
Okay.
and Neil and Stephen are good friends. They play together to this day. And so all of that stuff is just people that they need a story. And
Yeah.
so they write a story that, oh man, these guys weren't getting along, and it's baloney.
So what's this documentary that's coming out next year?
Well, my manager, David Stone, and his partner, Denny Klein, they just decided that my story was worth telling. It is kind of like a unique story,
Absolutely.
starting, three very, recognizable, nationally um, involved rock and roll bands of being Buffalo Springfield, Poco, and a Souther Hillman Furay band, and then taking 10 to 15 years off, to pastor a church, which I pastored for 35 years, and then to come back and play again. So they just thought the story was really worth telling, and so that's what's happening with that story. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I certainly want to see that.
Oh, it's going to be good. I tell you, we're waiting right now for the last couple of interviews. I thought the last one was going to be getting Neil. It took a couple years, to after him saying I'm in, to get him actually to get the three of us together. And then COVID came in, and that sent everything off into a different world and all. But we're waiting right now on just a couple more interviews. Actually, David Geffen is the one that we're actually waiting on right now, and we're getting people to come in and talk, which I just had no idea that we would ever be able to even get them to come in and talk, and it's been just great to see how many people are willing to give of their time and add to the interviews and all. Having Cameron Crowe involved, is
Wow.
I mean, I was his first interview, so he owes me. So
Yeah, we'll certainly look forward to that coming out. I think that'd be absolutely fascinating. But um, One question I have for you, the folk rock of Buffalo Spring. When I listen to Buffalo Springfield and to some extent the Byrds, I hear a lot of, might just be my ears, of course. I'm hearing a lot of the influence of the Beatles, especially in the guitar sound. I'm
Mhm.
just wondering if that was an influence, and obviously the Beatles seem to be an influence on the track Broken Arrow. I wonder if that's true or not.
Well, obviously the Beatles influenced us all.
Okay.
I mean, even when Stephen and I got together before there was a Buffalo Springfield, we got to, I'd gotten in touch with him. I was living in New York and he had moved to Los Angeles, and I got in touch with him. When I heard the Byrds' first record,
Yeah.
Graham Parson had brought that up to me when I was working with at a plant called Pratt and Whitney Aircraft, and Graham, who lived across the street from me in New York, brought this record up to me, and it was like, oh my gosh, I got to get back to making music, and got a hold of Stephen. And so when Stephen and I got together, the influence that the Beatles had, was the fact that you had John Lennon and you had Paul McCartney and you had George Harrison. You had three singers, but you had Lennon and McCartney that would sing in unison and do their thing together. And so Stephen and I mean, I don't know if it was really a conscious thing, but in the Springfield, we had Neil singing, we had myself singing, and we had Stephen singing, and yet Stephen and I then would sing and do unison parts and break off in harmonies as the Beatles did, as John and Paul did, and so they obviously had an influence on us. You can't deny that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, interesting with the Byrds, Mr. Tambourine Man. I think it was about 1965.
Hmm.
Do you see that as the catalyst that saw a shift from the sort of New York folk scene to the West Coast?
Well, absolutely. They were taking folk music and putting electric guitars to it,
Yeah, yeah.
and it was changing rapidly then. And I think that's really one of the things that caught my ear when I heard Tambourine Man. When Graham brought that record up to me to listen to as I was working at Pratt and Whitney. It was just something. It was unique. It was something different, and it was fresh, and it was very inspiring to me, enough so that I said, hey, I got to find out what Steven's doing in California and get out there and see if we can make some music together.
So you were quite pleased when Bob Dylan plugged in.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Hey, I'm one from, let's keep looking forward.
Yeah, yeah. What is your favorite version of The Sound of Silence by Simon? Is it the quiet version or the electric version?
um you know as I think about that song, um I like the electric version, I guess. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah,
It
yeah.
has a majesty, doesn't it? It's,
Yes, it does.
I think so.
Yeah. And again, there you go, experimenting and putting different sounds to a song that was obviously written, probably as just an acoustic, song. And then when you hear, what here's what's available, here's what we can do to it. I think it's great.
Yeah. Um, I'm interested. I don't know if you can answer this question, but why was Stephen Stills turned down for the Monkees? Could you not?
Hmm.
Could you not see him? Could you not see Stephen as a monkey?
Um, well, it certainly wasn't to be. I think Peter was the guy that they wanted, so they were friends. But I'm glad for whatever reason that he did get turned down for it, because we had an opportunity then to make music together again after our little folk group in New York. So uh, I'm happy that he did get turned down.
If you think about that Southern Californian rock in the 70s, bands like the Eagles, I mean, how much of a debt do you think they owe you and Buffalo Springfield in terms of their sound?
Well, let me just say, I've heard from the platform and from the stage, Glenn Fry, acknowledge Buffalo Springfield and Poco.
Yeah, yeah.
That without those influences, there, who knows what would have happened with the Eagles. Glenn Fry sat in my living room at 2300 Laurel Canyon Boulevard and listened to me rehearse Poco.
Oh, wow.
And so obviously, he was picking up something, he was hearing something. And so he sat in my living room when we were rehearsing. So obviously, somebody has to pioneer it. And obviously, I'll just say that the Eagles took it to the limit.
Very good. Well done. And of course, didn't you work with Don Felder? He was in an early incarnation of a band you were in or something. Is that right?
No, never worked with Don. I have not even met Don. I would love to meet him sometime. What a
Okay.
great musician and a great addition, he was to the Eagles. And just like every other, well, not every other band, but most bands, they're like families, and sometimes
Yeah.
families have difficulties and you have to go your separate ways. But Don was quite a contributor to the Eagles' overall sound. There's no doubt about it. I mean, he was definitely an integral part of that band, and they needed, when he left and had difficulties with whoever it was with Don or Glenn, I don't know, but they needed somebody to really replace him because he was a very creative asset to that band.
Yeah, I think Don Felder is absolutely fantastic. I'd love to
Yeah,
see him play with the Eagles again. I really would.
yeah.
What was it like opening for the Byrds, and was there an element of competition between you guys? And wasn't Dave Crosby quite dismissive of Buffalo Springfield to begin with?
Well, as far as opening up for the Byrds, wow, what an opportunity! Here I
Wow.
am listening to their first record back in Connecticut, coming out, starting a band, and I don't think we had been doing anything. I mean, once Neil and Bruce actually arrived in Los Angeles, and Stephen and I got together with them and added Dewey. I don't know what that time frame was, but I'll tell you what, Barry, it was so fast. I
Yeah.
mean, and then to be on the same stage playing with the Bird, someone that obviously, influenced me enough to say, man, I got to get to California and make music. So it was fantastic, and I'm not sure if David. I really don't know about David dismissing us. We're am under the impression that it was either him or Chris that helped get us our job at the Whiskey A Go Go, to start. So I don't know about that aspect of David for sure.
Well, Dave Crosby joined you on stage at the Monterey Pop Festival, didn't he?
Uh-huh. Yep, he did, and also I think at one other show that we did, I was recovering from tonsillitis, and I think he joined us at the Hullabaloo to take my place at one point in time too.
Okay. Yeah, I saw a few years ago. I saw Crosby, Stills and Nash, and the voices. They still had absolutely beautiful voices, even at that age. They were absolutely wonderful.
Yeah.
Uh, Again, ask you about in terms of your experience of opening up for bands. You opened up for the Stones, I believe.
There's another one. Here we are going on to the Hollywood Bowl stage to open up for the Rolling Stones, and we didn't even have a record contract. So it was pretty unique what was happening to us at that time. It makes you stop and wonder what would have happened had we really, stayed together and maybe had a manager at the time and a producer to help us, get our recording and our music, a little more, I don't know, professionally done. But we had difficulties with our management, and
Yeah.
we also, had who also produced our first record.
Mm.
Of which, I think there's been quite a bit of talk and print, that happened, with us being discouraged with that.
Yeah.
They just didn't really have the ear to hear what we were doing.
Interestingly, Mark Volman of the Turtles, he said the first Buffalo Springfield's album is one of the classics of the folk rock era. Would you agree with him?
Ah, Mark, my good old roommate that I lived with for a while and I loved dearly. Yeah, I think his observation, is probably right on. I mean, but it is personalized too. I mean, we were certainly coming out of the folk rock era, and I'll be honest with you, Barry. The first time that I heard "For What It's Worth,"
Yeah.
I thought, "Oh man, what a nice little folk song, Stephen." But it went right over my head. I was into Rock and Roll Woman and Bluebird and Mr. Soul and all the songs, rock and roll songs we were playing. And here, we're re-releasing our first album now and putting "For What It's Worth." Well, I thought, oh, that's just a nice little folk song, But Ahmet Ertegun heard it and he said, "That's a hit, man. We got to do that."
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I love that first album. I really do. But I read some of that you guys were frustrated with it because it didn't quite capture your live sound.
It didn't. And that's where I think, again, we just, if we would have had somebody with that was professionally, or someone who was really making records at the time. I think, I don't think Green and Stone they were not an asset to the band at all.
Um, why was the Stampede album not released? Is it your smile, so to speak, like your
Well, basically, it was released. It was the second album. I think
okay.
it was released. That was the second album.
So there's a kind of like a mythology around this record, but so it all came out really.
Yeah,
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 okay.
and it was an album shoot, that we did, and basically it was the second album.
Yeah, okay. You worked with Skip Spence, I believe. Is that right?
Yeah, Moby Grape.
Yeah, that's
I didn't
right.
work first. I didn't work personally with him, but with as we did work with Moby Grape on certain occasions, as a group. Yeah.
But wasn't he quite a troubled man? And I was going to say, was he difficult to work with, or?
Well, I mean, as far as the inner workings of that band and him, I really don't know, Barry. I can't comment on that. I mean, I can't comment.
Okay. Did Otis Redding ever get to cover Mr. Soul?
I don't know that he did, but I think one of the thrills of my life was to have him come and sing with us at Ondine's in New York. Dewey befriended him and brought him to Ondine's, and to have Otis Redding come on stage with us and perform was just like one of the greatest thrills, I think, of my career, for sure. But I don't know that he ever did. I don't know that he ever did record Mr. Soul. I don't know.
Right, right. Another one who was taken from us way, way too early, I think, Otis Redding.
Oh boy. Yeah.
I've got one more question for you. I'm just wondering, which album do you think is more important in terms of its influence on music? The Beatles' Sgt. Pepper or the Beach Boys' Pet Sounds?
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. That's like asking the question, which one of my daughters do I love the best, or do I like the best? I Man, both of those albums are absolutely milestones in a lot of our careers, and it would be very difficult to say which one had the greater influence. I think they were both just absolutely phenomenal. I mean, they were masterpieces.
Yeah, my daughter jokes that when I die, she's saying, "I wonder how many copies of Pet Sounds I will own," because whenever it's reissued, I just have to have another copy of it. It's a wonderful, wonderful album.
Yeah.
Richie, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you. I don't know if you have other interviews to do, but thank you so much for spending this time with me anyway.
More than welcome, Barry. Thanks for reaching out, man. I'm glad we could talk. Love
Yeah.
to get over there. And I mean, even at this age, I'm still playing a little bit and would love to get over and see you guys one of these days. I doubt that well, I shouldn't say never, because when you say never, it always changes and you get opportunities. So maybe I'll get the opportunity to get over there one of these days.
Well, I hope you do. Anyway, thank you so much for your time. I wish you, well, it's quite early for you, isn't it? Midday or something for you?
It's noon. Yeah, it's right. It's noon. So I got the whole day ahead of me.
That's wonderful. You enjoy it. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you very much. Thanks, Barry. Bye bye.
Bye bye.